The grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and white roses that probably cost more than Emma Carter's monthly rent. She sat alone at table 18, tucked away in the corner near the kitchen doors, watching her younger sister Victoria glide across the dance floor in a custom Vera Wang gown that caught the light with every turn. Emma smoothed down her modest navy dress, the same one she wore to job interviews and funerals. It felt appropriate for both occasions. Her mother had made it clear weeks ago that Emma's presence was obligatory, not desired. Family appearances mattered, even if Emma herself did not. The chair beside her remained empty. The place card read, "Guest of Emma Carter." But there was no guest. There never was. Her aunts whispered behind their champagne flutes, their eyes cutting toward her with practiced disdain. Emma had learned to recognize that look years ago, when Victoria started winning beauty pageants at age 6, and Emma was still struggling with braces and acne at 14. A waiter passed by without offering her champagne. Emma raised her hand, but he pretended not to notice. She lowered it slowly, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation settle in her chest. This was what her family did best, making her invisible while keeping her on display. The DJ announced the father-daughter dance. Emma watched her father, Richard Carter, a prominent Manhattan attorney, take Victoria's hand, with genuine pride radiating from his face. Emma could not remember the last time he looked at her that way. Maybe he never had. She was the daughter from his first marriage, the reminder of his past mistakes, while Victoria was the golden child from his second chance at happiness. Emma pulled out her phone, scrolling through nothing, just to have something to do with her hands. The table assignments had been carefully orchestrated. Her stepmother Patricia had seen to that. Emma was far enough away to not embarrass anyone in the wedding photos, but visible enough that no one could say she had been excluded entirely. A shadow fell across her table. Emma looked up, expecting another waiter ready to ignore her. Instead, she found herself staring at a man who commanded attention without effort. He was tall, dressed in an impeccably tailored black suit that probably cost more than her car. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they observed. "This seat taken?" His voice was smooth, with a hint of something dangerous underneath, like velvet over steel. Emma glanced at the empty chair, then back at him. "It's reserved for my imaginary date." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Perfect. I'm excellent at playing imaginary." Without waiting for her response, he sat down, adjusting his cufflinks with deliberate precision. Emma noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, the kind that appeared in luxury magazines. Up close, she could see he was probably in his mid-30s, with the kind of confidence that came from power, not posture. "Dominic Russo," he said, extending his hand. Emma hesitated before shaking it. His grip was firm, controlled. "Emma Carter, I'm the bride's sister. I know who you are." He leaned back in his chair, studying the ballroom with the air of someone assessing territory. "I'm a business associate of your father's. Recent acquaintance, actually." Emma's father worked with dozens of clients. She had stopped trying to remember their names years ago, but something about the way Dominic said business associate made her think there was more to the story. "You picked the worst seat in the house," Emma said, trying to sound casual. "The view of my family's dysfunction is complimentary, though." Dominic's eyes returned to her, and she felt the weight of his full attention. It was unsettling and oddly thrilling at the same time. "I chose this seat specifically." "Why would anyone choose to sit in social Siberia?" "Because I need a favor." He paused, watching a group of men in expensive suits near the bar. Emma followed his gaze. They looked like they belonged in a boardroom or a crime thriller. "And you look like someone who could use one, too." Emma laughed, a short, bitter sound. "I'm fine." "You're sitting alone at your sister's wedding while your family pretends you don't exist. That's not fine. His bluntness should have offended her, but instead it felt refreshing. No one ever acknowledged the obvious. "What kind of favor?" Emma asked, curiosity overriding caution. Dominic turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "I need you to act like we're together. Laugh at my jokes, touch my arm occasionally, look interested when I talk. Just for tonight." Emma blinked. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? At my sister's wedding? Partner, date, whatever you want to call it. There are people here who need to believe I'm settled. Less focused on business, more on personal life." His eyes flicked back to the men at the bar. "It's important. Why me?" "Because you're the only person in this room who has nothing to lose and everything to gain from making your family regret seating you at table 18. Emma's heart beat faster. He was right. The thought of walking through this wedding with someone like Dominic Rousseau, having her family see her as something other than the forgotten daughter, was intoxicating. "What's in it for you, really?" she pressed. "Let's just say appearances matter in my line of work. A man with a beautiful woman on his arm looks stable, trustworthy. A man alone looks dangerous." "You are dangerous," Emma said. It wasn't a question. Dominic smiled. And it was the kind of smile that probably made people nervous in negotiation rooms. "Then we both benefit from this arrangement. What do you say, Emma Carter? Want to give your family something to talk about?" Emma looked across the ballroom at her mother, who was posing for photos with Victoria, both of them picture perfect. Then she looked at Dominic, this stranger offering her a temporary escape from invisibility. "Okay," she said, "I'll act with you." Dominic stood and offered his hand. "Then let's start with a dance. Give them something worth watching." Emma took his hand, her legs feeling unsteady as she rose. She had not expected this evening to be anything but painful. Now, walking toward the dance floor with Dominic Rousseau's hand steady against her back, she felt something she had not felt in years. Visible. The dance floor was crowded with couples swaying to a slow jazz number. Emma felt every eye turned toward them as Dominic led her to the center. His hand found the small of her back, the other clasping hers with surprising gentleness. For someone who carried himself like a weapon, he held her like something valuable. "You're tense," he murmured, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. "Relax. This only works if you look like you want to be here." "I'm not a good actress," Emma admitted, her free hand resting awkwardly on his shoulder. "You've been acting your whole life, pretending you're fine when you're not, pretending their opinions don't hurt. This is just a different role." His voice was low, meant only for her. "Besides, you don't have to act much. Just follow my lead." They moved together, and Emma was surprised to find that Dominic danced well. Not the stiff, obligatory movement of most men at weddings, but with actual rhythm and control. She caught her mother's face in her peripheral vision, Patricia's expression frozen in shock. "Your mother looks like she just saw a ghost," Dominic observed, amusement coloring his tone. "She's probably wondering who you are and why you're wasting time on me." "Let her wonder." Dominic spun her gently, then pulled her back. The movement was smooth, practiced. "Tell me something, Emma. What do you do when you're not being invisible at your family's events?" "I'm a freelance graphic designer. I work from home, mostly for small businesses. It's not glamorous." "But it's yours," Dominic said, and there was something in his voice that sounded like understanding. "You don't answer to anyone, except clients and my landlord and the electric company." Emma surprised herself by almost smiling. "But yes, it's mine. That matters more than you think." The song transitioned into another slow melody. Dominic didn't release her. "Freedom is expensive. Most people never achieve it." Emma studied his face. Up close, she could see faint lines around his eyes, the kind that came from stress, not age. "You don't seem free," You seem like someone always looking over his shoulder. Observant. Dominic's grip tightened slightly on her waist. The men at the bar, the ones I mentioned. Do you see them? Emma glanced discreetly. 3 men in dark suits stood together, drinks in hand, watching the dance floor. Watching them. Who are they? Associates. They're here to see if I'm becoming a liability. A man in my position needs to demonstrate stability, relationships, connections beyond business. Otherwise, they start to question your focus, your loyalty. So I'm part of a performance to convince them you're stable. You're part of showing them I'm human, that I have interests outside of work. Dominic's eyes met hers, but that doesn't mean this has to be entirely fake. I find you interesting, Emma Carter. You don't know anything about me. I know you're strong enough to sit alone at that table with your head up. I know you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity when you see one, and I know you're brave enough to take a risk on a stranger. He paused. That's more than most people reveal in a lifetime. Emma's breath caught. She was used to being overlooked, underestimated. Dominic was doing neither. What happens after tonight? That depends on how convincing we are, and whether you're interested in continuing this arrangement. Continuing? The music ended. Dominic stepped back but kept her hand in his. I have business dinners, social events, places where appearing with a partner would be advantageous. You'd be compensated, of course, generously. You want to pay me to be your fake girlfriend? I want to pay you to help me maintain appearances, while you get to enjoy the benefits of being seen with someone like me. New clothes, fine dining, access to places you'd never get into otherwise, and your family gets to watch you thrive. It should have sounded insulting. Instead, it sounded like the first honest offer anyone had made her in years. No pretense of romance, no false promises, just a transaction that benefited both parties. Before Emma could respond, Victoria appeared beside them, her wedding dress rustling like expensive paper. Her smile was bright and hollow. Emma, I didn't know you were bringing someone. You should have told us. We would have arranged a better table. The lie was smooth, practiced. Emma felt the old familiar shame rising. Dominic's hand moved to her waist, possessive and protective. The table was perfect, Dominic said, his voice pleasant, but edged with something that made Victoria's smile falter. Intimate, private, we had a lovely conversation. Victoria's eyes darted between them, recalculating. I'm Victoria Carter. Well, Victoria Ashford now. She extended her hand to Dominic, who shook it briefly, formally. Dominic Russo, congratulations on your marriage. Thank you. How do you and Emma know each other? Victoria's tone was light, but Emma recognized the interrogation underneath. We met through mutual interests, Emma said before Dominic could answer. The vague response would drive her sister crazy. It's recent. How wonderful! Victoria's voice climbed an octave. You'll have to join us for dinner sometime. I'd love to hear all about it. We'd be delighted, Dominic said smoothly. Though our schedule is quite full, I'll have Emma coordinate with you. It was a dismissal, polite but firm. Victoria's smile tightened. She was used to being the center of attention, the one who controlled conversations. Dominic had just shifted the power dynamic, and she didn't like it. Well, I should get back to my guests. It was nice meeting you, Dominic. Victoria leaned in to kiss Emma's cheek, whispering so only she could hear, We need to talk later. As Victoria walked away, Emma released a breath she didn't know she was holding. You just made an enemy of the bride at her own wedding. She was already your enemy. I just leveled the playing field. Dominic guided her toward the bar. Besides, something tells me she's had everything her way for too long. A little competition is healthy. At the bar, Dominic ordered scotch for himself and asked Emma what she wanted. She requested white wine, and the bartender served them both immediately, with genuine courtesy. Emma realized it was the first time all evening someone had treated her like she belonged here. Richard Carter approached, his attorney's smile in place. "Dominic, I didn't expect to see you here." "Richard." Dominic's greeting was cordial but cool. "Beautiful wedding. Your daughter makes a lovely bride." "Thank you. I see you've met Emma." Richard's eyes flicked to his oldest daughter, and Emma saw the calculation there. Her father was wondering what Dominic's interest meant, what advantage or disadvantage it presented. "Emma and I have been getting to know each other," Dominic said. "She's remarkable. You must be very proud." The statement hung in the air, a challenge wrapped in courtesy. Richard's smile didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Of course, both my daughters are special." The lie was so casual, so practiced, that Emma almost believed he believed it. Dominic's hand found hers, fingers interlacing. The gesture was intimate, claiming. "I'd like to discuss that matter we talked about last week," Richard said to Dominic, his voice dropping to business tones. "Perhaps Monday?" "Perhaps," Dominic replied non-committally. "Enjoy your evening, Richard. It's a celebration." It was another dismissal. Richard nodded, his lawyer's mask never slipping, and walked away. Emma stared at Dominic. "What matter?" "Your father is seeking representation for a client with complicated needs. I'm considering whether to recommend someone." Dominic sipped his scotch. "But business and personal life should remain separate, don't you think?" Emma was beginning to understand that everything Dominic did served multiple purposes. Dancing with her had been about the men at the bar, but it had also been about establishing a dynamic with her family. Meeting her father had been social courtesy, but it had also been a subtle power play. "You're very good at this," Emma said quietly. "At what?" "Managing people, controlling situations." "It's survival." Dominic set down his glass. "In my world, you either control the narrative or become part of someone else's story. I prefer to write my own." One of the men from the bar approached. He was shorter than Dominic, stocky, with a face that had seen violence. "Russo, didn't know you'd be here." "Marco," Dominic's voice cooled several degrees. "I'm here as a guest, enjoying the evening with my companion." He turned to Emma. "Emma, this is Marco Benedetti. Marco, Emma Carter." Marco's eyes swept over Emma with open appraisal that made her skin crawl. "Pleasure. Russo, we should talk." "Tomorrow. Tonight is personal time. It's important." "Tomorrow," Dominic repeated, and this time there was steel in his voice. "Respect that." Marco's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Tomorrow, then. Enjoy your evening." He walked away, but not before giving Emma one more uncomfortable look. Emma waited until he was gone. What was that about? That was about boundaries. Marco needed to see that I have a life outside our business arrangements, that I'm not available at his convenience. Dominic's expression softened slightly. "And he needed to see that you're under my protection. He won't bother you again." "Protection from what?" Dominic was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "Emma, if you continue this arrangement with me, you'll encounter people like Marco, men who operate in grey areas, who respect power and little else. As long as you're with me, you're safe. They'll see you as mine, and that means untouchable." The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, Emma felt something closer to relief. For the first time in her life, someone was claiming her, protecting her, seeing her as worth defending. And when the arrangement ends, then you walk away with enough money to disappear if you want, start fresh somewhere else, build whatever life you choose. Dominic's eyes held hers. "But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's get through tonight first." The wedding reception continued around them, a blur of champagne toasts and cake cutting. But Emma only noticed Dominic, his presence solid and certain beside her, When Patricia attempted to approach, one look from Dominic sent her in another direction. When Victoria's new in-laws stared, Dominic pulled Emma onto the dance floor again, making it clear she was exactly where she was supposed to be. As the evening wound down, Dominic walked Emma to her car, a 10-year-old Honda parked in the far corner of the plaza's garage. It looked pathetic next to the luxury vehicles surrounding it. "This is me," Emma said, suddenly embarrassed. Dominic didn't comment on the car. Instead, he pulled out his phone. "Your number. We should discuss the details of our arrangement." Emma rattled off her number, watching him save it. The reality of what she had agreed to was settling in. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about stepping into a world she didn't understand, with a man who was probably more dangerous than she could imagine. "Second thoughts?" Dominic asked, reading her expression. "About 1,000 of them. Good. That means you're smart." He stepped closer, and Emma's breath caught. But being smart doesn't always mean being safe. Sometimes it means taking calculated risks. This is one of them. "Why do I feel like I just made a deal with the devil?" Dominic smiled, and it was genuine this time, almost warm. "Because you probably did. But at least this devil keeps his promises. I'll call you tomorrow. We'll discuss terms, boundaries, expectations. This works only if we're both honest about what we want. And what do you want? Right now, I want to see you again, beyond the arrangement, beyond the business. I want to know who Emma Carter really is when she's not sitting at table 18. He opened her car door, a gesture so unexpectedly gentlemanly that Emma almost laughed. As she drove away, she watched him in her rearview mirror, standing alone in the parking garage, his phone already to his ear, back to business. Emma's hands trembled on the steering wheel. She had come to this wedding expecting humiliation and loneliness. She was leaving with a proposition that could change everything or destroy her completely. Either way, she was no longer invisible, and that, she realized, was worth almost any risk. Emma's phone rang at 9 a.m., jolting her awake from restless dreams filled with crystal chandeliers and dark-eyed strangers. She fumbled for it, seeing an unknown number on the screen. "Hello?" Her voice was rough with sleep. "Emma, it's Dominic. Did I wake you?" She sat up, suddenly alert. In the harsh morning light, last night felt like a fever dream. "No, I was just—" "Yes, you woke me." "My apologies, I'm not accustomed to waiting. Can you be ready in an hour? We need to talk, and I prefer to do it in person." "Ready for what?" "Breakfast, discussion, establishing the parameters of our agreement." There was rustling in the background, the sound of someone who was already moving through their day. "I'll send a car. Wear something comfortable but presentable. We're going somewhere public." Emma's practical mind kicked in. "I haven't agreed to anything yet. Last night was an audition, for both of us." Dominic's voice softened slightly. "This morning is the real negotiation. Address?" Against her better judgment, Emma gave it. After hanging up, she stared at her tiny studio apartment, seeing it through Dominic's eyes. The second-hand furniture, the laptop balanced on a thrift store desk, the evidence of a life lived on the margins of other people's success. She showered quickly, settling on dark jeans and a simple cream sweater, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a ponytail. If Dominic wanted the real Emma Carter, this was her. No performance. Exactly 1 hour later, her phone buzzed with a text. "Car outside." Emma looked out her window and felt her stomach drop. A black Mercedes sedan idled at the curb, looking obscenely expensive against the backdrop of her modest Queens neighborhood. The driver, a man in a dark suit, stood beside the back door. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was already peering through her curtains. By tonight, the entire building would be speculating. Emma grabbed her bag and headed downstairs before she could change her mind. The driver opened the door without a word. Inside, the car smelled like leather and money. Emma sank into seats more comfortable than her own bed. The drive into Manhattan took 30 minutes, crossing the bridge while Emma watched the city skyline grow closer. They pulled up to a small cafe in the West Village, the kind of place that looked unassuming, but probably charged $20 for avocado toast. Dominic was already there, sitting at a corner table with sightlines to both the entrance and the street. Old habits, Emma thought, or current necessities. He stood when she approached, pulling out her chair. In daylight he looked less dangerous and more tired. The lines around his eyes were more pronounced, and Emma wondered when he had last slept through the night. "Thank you for coming," Dominic said, signaling the waiter. "Order whatever you'd like." Emma scanned the menu, her eyes widening at the prices. She ordered coffee and a croissant, keeping it simple. Dominic ordered an egg white omelette and espresso. The breakfast of someone who treated meals as fuel, not pleasure. "You look nervous," he observed. "I'm sitting across from a man who I met 12 hours ago, who might be involved in organized crime, discussing becoming his fake girlfriend. Nervous doesn't quite cover it." Dominic's lips twitched. "Fair assessment. Let me clarify a few things. First, I'm not involved in organized crime. I'm a legitimate businessman with investments in construction, real estate, and import-export. However, some of my associates have less legitimate backgrounds. I manage those relationships carefully." "That's a very lawyer-like answer. I employ excellent lawyers." He leaned forward. "Emma, I need you to understand what you'd be walking into. My world operates on appearances and respect. There are people who would use any perceived weakness against me. A relationship, even a fake one, could be seen as either a weakness or a strength, depending on how it's presented." "And you think I can present strength?" "I think you survived being invisible in your own family and still showed up to that wedding with dignity. That's not weakness, that's steel." Dominic paused as their food arrived. "What I'm proposing is a 6-month arrangement. You accompany me to business dinners, social events, anything where a partner would be appropriate. In exchange, you receive $10,000 monthly, plus expenses for clothing, hair, anything you need to look the part." Emma's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. $10,000? Monthly. $60,000 for 6 months, paid in cash or transferred to an account of your choosing. It was more money than Emma made in a year, possibly 2 years. "What's the catch?" "The catch is that you have to be convincing. My associates need to believe we're genuinely involved. That means learning about my business in broad terms, being comfortable in high-pressure social situations, and maintaining the fiction even when it's uncomfortable." "And the other catch?" Dominic's eyes met hers. "The danger. Not immediate, not likely, but present. Being associated with me puts a target on your back, however small. There are people who might try to use you to get to me. That's why you'd have security, why certain precautions would be necessary." Emma's appetite disappeared. Security, precautions. Dominic, this sounds insane. It is insane. It's also an opportunity to change your life. $60,000 could pay off debt, fund a business, let you live somewhere other than... He trailed off delicately. "Other than a studio apartment in Queens, where the heat doesn't work half the time?" Emma finished. "You looked up my address." "Dis, I research everyone I work with. It's not personal, it's practical." "And what else did your research tell you?"